Hey everybody, it's Allie, and welcome to our Y&R Chat for Sunday, August 2nd, 2020. It's Newman Family Week, and I miss the Victor Newman who gave boxing life lessons that actually meant something, and where it also seemed like Victor was kind of trying to live by the things that he's teaching. A lot of the times when Victor dispenses any kind of wisdom today, it rings a little bit hollow. I liked flashing back to the 1994 version where Victor was a lot more relaxed and a lot more relatable. And in 1994, Victor was there genuinely trying to help Nick by giving him what was some pretty decent advice. Boxing is like life. Everybody is scared when you're getting ready to go into a match. But what makes you a champion is figuring out how you're going to overcome it. That's the gist of what Victor was telling Nick. It's a solid thing to tell a kid right as Nick was starting to come into his own. He was getting ready to have some soap opera man troubles of his own for the very first time with Matt Clark. Matt Clark was going to become Nick's big rival. He was going to be getting into a fight, many fights, in a lot of ways the fight of his life up until that point with Matt Clark. And Victor was, without knowing it, giving Nick some helpful advice to prepare him for it. We've talked a lot about Nick and Matt Clark in the past several weeks, so I'm not going to focus too much on it right now. But I just, in an overall sense, liked Victor in this episode. I liked better the way that he was treating his children, because in that same episode, we also had Victoria. Victor was seeming to be more relaxed and show more respect to Victoria and her decisions. Nikki was losing it. Nikki was the more unhinged of the two in the day, I think, back in that day. Nikki was very concerned about the kind of work that Victoria may have been doing in New York after Victoria ran off to New York, after Victoria found out that Cole and her mother, Nikki, had a little thing going on. And Nikki was possibly rightfully concerned about what kind of trouble, what kind of rebellious trouble Victoria would be getting herself into. But I thought it was interesting that even Nick was commenting to Victor about how Nikki seemed like she was a little bit off. Like she didn't even want Nick around, whereas Victor was remaining relatively calm. When Nikki freaked out at Victor about what Victoria may have done, Victor just calmly approached Cole, who was Victoria's husband at the time. Victor asked Cole, what's up with this situation? And although Cole lied to Victor, because Cole knew exactly what was up with the situation, that Victoria had gone off and posed for these nudie pics, I still liked the fact that it was a calmer, kinder, gentler version of Victor. That was my main takeaway from the episode. I miss that guy. I mean, I know that guy was not going to be very calm and cool and collected when he found out about Victoria's nudie pics. But right there in that moment, it was a good moment for Victor Newman. We also already talked about most of the storylines that were shown in Monday's episode, including Victoria's centerfold. I think the more noteworthy thing from that episode might just very well be Victoria's hairstyle? That was the talk of the week. It was quite a bold hairstyle, if I do say so myself. I did a little research on this because I knew that this was a style and I wanted to be able to pinpoint it. It's actually the style with the sort of two curls on either side of the head. It's sort of a half ponytail. It's called victory rolls, and it was a hairstyle that was originated during World War II. Victory rolls. And, you know, it's been popularized a lot in pinup imagery, but also I think the reason why we were seeing, and this is just my assessment, seeing Victoria in those victory rolls in 1994, I think it was because swing dancing had become repopularized in the 90s, and swing dancing was very popular during World War II. So I think that the stylists at Y&R were picking up on that trend and representing it there in Victoria's hair. I also noticed that Drusilla had a pretty high half ponytail bang thing going on in her part of the 1994 episode in the doctor's office scene. I mean, what about that? I mean, we spent 20 minutes of film there on the most obvious diagnosis that can ever be. Drusilla's tired. She's hungry. She felt a little dizzy. Damn, Drew! It does not take a doctor to diagnose the fact that you're pregnant. Put it together. It took forever. It was almost torturous watching her sit there in the doctor's office, knowing exactly what it was, but, her not putting the pieces together herself. I'm feeling like maybe there was a little bit of deep denial going on with Drusilla in that scene, considering the fact that she was pregnant, but it was with her husband's brother's child. Little Abby in 2004 looked so much like little Faith when Faith was littler. For a moment, I slipped into a time warp, and I was so completely confused about which daughter I was looking at. I had to check myself, like, no, that's little Abby, not Faith. They did look a lot alike. Well, here's the scoop about Abby's paternity. Ashley ran off to Paris after Blade died, and she came back to Genoa City mysteriously pregnant. Nobody knew who the father was. She wasn't telling anyone. Ashley then got involved with Brad Carlton, and Brad loved Ashley very much. He wanted to marry her. He did marry her, and he always accepted that he wasn't the father of this child, but he felt as if they were still a family. So he accepted the child that Ashley had as his own. And it wasn't until after Ashley had given birth to Abby, and while she was battling breast cancer, that the truth came out for the first time about who Abby's father really was. In fact, we saw in a classic episode several weeks ago where Ashley was confessing that she had stolen Victor's sperm from a cryogenic lab and had herself inseminated with it, and that Victor Newman was Abby's biological father. I don't know if you guys remember that scene from the classic episodes, but it was Nikki and Victor's 2004 wedding. I want to say it was during Nikki and Victor week, the Friday episode. We saw Nikki and Victor in their separate dressing rooms, the bride and groom dressing rooms, and Ashley was lurking outside, and Olivia was trying to help her. Obviously, Ashley was still struggling with her treatments, and she was feeling sick, and Olivia had taken her home, and when Ashley went home, she filmed her confession about Abby's paternity on her VHS recorder while Abby was in a little crib off to the side. And at the very end of that Friday episode, we saw Brad walking into their large, luxurious house. And I believe that it was in the following episode that he actually found out. I think he walked in on Ashley's confession, or that was the point, at least, where she told him the truth. But Ashley had convinced Brad that he shouldn't say a thing. Their marriage was strong. There was no reason to bring Victor into this. So Brad went along and continued to raise Abby as his own daughter for quite some time. But then Ashley went into remission on her cancer, and she decided that it was time to tell Victor the truth. And of course, Brad was still with Ashley, but he knew that he couldn't stop her. But Ashley was determined for Victor to now know. Along the way, Nikki had also learned Ashley's secret, and she was terrified that this was going to destroy her new remarriage to Victor, because after all, Ashley saw having inseminated herself with Victor's child, she saw that as righting a wrong for the miscarriage that Ashley suffered during her marriage to Victor, because Victor was off tending to Nikki while Ashley was married to him. Do you remember when Nikki was faking her terminal illness? There was a fantasy scene that Nikki had where they had a casket reunion. She was dead and then she popped up from the casket and Victor loved her again. Well, all the while that Nikki's faking this illness and trying to lure Victor back to her, he was still with Ashley, and Ashley ended up miscarrying a child that she had with him. So in a way, Ashley, I think, was motivated by wanting to right that wrong. But unfortunately, or maybe it was fortunately for everyone, before Ashley could tell Victor, or before Nikki could tell Victor the truth, little Abby beat them all to it. Oh, I just imagine, I don't know if Y&R showed the scene or not. I'm sure that they did, but I just imagine that there was one day where little Abby was probably innocently wanting to watch her Finding Nemo VHS tape. She went to pop that into the VCR and she ended up accidentally seeing Mommy's confession video instead. Oopsie. You know what that means, kid. Boarding school for you. I miss Nikki and Katherine's friendship. I miss them just confiding in each other in the way that they were in that 2004 episode where Abby's paternity was about to be revealed. I just think that it's nice to see friendships, and I also think that the people in Genoa City really need a wise elder that's going to give them some straight talk, and that's the role that Katherine had been filling in the years before her death, and that's the role that's missing from the show now. Someone coming in to provide some reason. We just don't have that anymore. Katherine was the sole provider of that up until her death. And I just loved her there. I loved the way she looked in her red blazer. Although I was completely disappointed when she showed up at Nikki's ranch doorstep and she had a coat that was draped over her shoulders, but that coat was not fur, and I was personally offended by that. I kept thinking, come on, Katherine, it is still April. You can easily wear the furs into May. Why no fur? But she did not disappoint me, because when she when she showed up at Victoria and JT's wedding, it was a February wedding, so she did have the fur draped over her shoulders. I just don't even know how that works. Does she have a helper at her front door, like, so that when she leaves the house to go get into the car, they just drape the fur, the long fur, over her shoulders, and then she goes to get in the car? But then if you're sitting in the car, isn't the the coat scrunching down and falling off, and then maybe she has someone else to help her put it on her shoulders right before when she exits the car and goes to wherever she's going. Or maybe the answer is that she's never in a car. And it's all a fantasy, but I'm obsessed with the way that Katherine just shows up places with a long fur just draped over her shoulders. It's her move. It's the Katherine move, but it's totally impractical, or I would be doing it. Well, the thing that caught my attention from that conversation with Nikki and Katherine was that Katherine had come to the ranch to inform Nikki that a man named Arthur was moving into the mansion. And I thought to myself, what's that all about? I mean, the whole conversation turned very quickly to Nikki revealing Abby's paternity secret, but my interest was piqued about who this guy was, Arthur, and why he would be living at the Chancellor Mansion with Katherine. Well, turns out his name was Arthur Hendricks, and he had been introduced onto the show and given this backstory that he was an old flame of Katherine's from before she was married to Philip Chancellor II. So Arthur comes back into Katherine's life in around 2004, and he was just there to visit her and say hello, but he found that Katherine was very depressed at the time, and she was actually drinking a lot at the time. So Arthur wanted to stay around to support her. And now I'm realizing all of these months later that Arthur Hendricks, this was the guy, the mystery guy, who was at Katherine's intervention party during the very first week of classic episodes, during Katherine the Great week. He, the one where Katherine was wearing the rainbow sorbet caftan. And we had this mystery guy in the background with the perfect teeth, and I couldn't figure out who the heck he was. I think she called him Judge or something, but it was Arthur Hendricks. That's who it was. He was short-lived on the show. He seemed to be a romantic pairing for Katherine, sort of, but also sort of not. Because, guess what? He had a son who was accusing him of, yes, you guessed it, murdering his last wife for her money. Ding, 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 ding. That's always the motive. Always. Wanting to marry somebody and kill him so they can get that money. Well, Arthur Hendricks, he was short-lived on the show, but he did actually serve a very important purpose for the storyline. Turns out Arthur Hendricks was Tucker McCall's dad. Tucker McCall is Devon's biological father, and Tucker McCall is the baby that Katherine gave away all those years ago, who just so happened to have the exact same birth date as Jill. And in a nutshell, that's the story of how Katherine and Jill stopped being mother and daughter. It was revealed that, oh yes, Katherine did have a baby a long time ago, but the baby she gave away all those years ago was not Jill, was not even a girl. It was a boy, and that boy's name was Tucker McCall. Why did Lauren Fenmore have such a soft spot for the town psycho? The answer is she didn't at first. At first, Kevin was just the town psycho who had been accused of Lily's statutory rape, accused of being an internet predator, and also accused or suspected of burning down Gina's restaurant, which don't even get me started about looking at Gina again then on, what was it, Thursday, Friday, where she was just so sad about the fact that her restaurant burned down and it was as if her house burned down. She was never able to have the same type of life again. It just makes me mad about that all over again. Kevin did it. Kevin burned down Gina's restaurant. He never went to jail for it, but we all know he did it. And in 2004, Kevin was also now becoming obsessed with Lauren Fenmore. Lauren was very obsessible. Kevin had an obsessive personality, and he was just so focused on her, and she didn't know what was coming. But Lauren and Paul were really close. So Paul brought Lauren up to speed on exactly what Kevin was accused of, and Lauren wanted to help use Kevin's obsession with her to lure information about all of these cases out of him. Lauren even went to Kevin to his prom. She went with Kevin to his prom in order to get closer to him, in order to lure information out of him. I wish I had a million screen caps of Lauren going to Kevin's prom. Was Kevin in high school when he first got onto the show? I thought he was older. I don't know how the prom thing happened. If anybody can fill in some of the blanks on that, I would love to know. And if you've got some photos of that, I'd also love to see. I think Lauren kind of liked younger guys in those days, so it was believable. Remember a few classic months ago when Lauren was kind of interested in Raul? I mean, Raul, forgive me. Oh. Well, when Kevin did find out that Lauren was deceiving him, she wasn't really going to the prom with him because she liked him, he flipped out. Kevin kidnapped Lauren, held her hostage, and was going to kill himself, but Michael talked him out of it. Michael stopped that from becoming a bigger disaster. Michael Baldwin Esquire was always there. He was always there to help Kevin out of a jam in those days. Well, in addition to the crimes that Kevin actually committed, he was also accused of a crime that he didn't commit. Kevin was wrongfully accused and wrongfully imprisoned for electrocuting Brittany Hodges at Marcino's dance club. Everybody assumed that since Kevin was the town psycho, he must have been the one who did it, but it was actually Angelo and some of the mob guys who were connected to Bobby. That's who was ultimately to blame for that. But Kevin went to jail, and that's where Lauren started to develop a soft spot for him, because she was having this budding friendship / relationship with Michael Baldwin, and in talking to him, she began to understand about the terrible abuse that Kevin suffered as a child. And since she knew that he was having these flashbacks and these panic attacks in jail and having a really hard time, Lauren decided to bail him out. And furthermore, we saw Lauren even refused to turn Kevin into the cops after that. After he confessed everything to her. We saw him stand there and confess it all to her, and she still turned around and told Paul she wasn't going to go to the police. At that point, Lauren had developed a sense of loyalty to the Baldwin Fisher family, and a year later, Kevin would become her brother-in-law. I have never in my life dreaded watching an episode of The Young and the Restless as much as I dreaded watching Wednesday's episode. I didn't want to do it. All day I had this sense of dread. And when it was finally time to play it, I didn't even want to look at my screen. I didn't want to go through Cassie's death again. So I did everything I could to not emotionally engage. Normally, I sit in bed and I just relax and watch Y&R and I try to absorb it. But Wednesday, I set the computer on my desk and I let the episode play while I paced around the room. I just kept pacing, trying to not allow myself to feel anything too deeply because I didn't want to put myself through, for even one day, what Nick and Sharon were going through there. I just didn't want to do it. I told myself I would, and then when the time came, I just couldn't do it. Sharon said to Cassie on her deathbed, "There is no greater love than the love between a parent and a child. And I never knew that until you came into my life." That's what Sharon said to her daughter. Now, in 2005, when I originally saw this episode, it rocked my little world. But I was only 25, and I didn't have my daughter yet. So watching it now, watching it from the perspective of being a parent and imagining what it would feel like to lose your child, it's just even more excruciating. It was excruciating for me at the time, and it was more excruciating for me now. And on top of that, I don't really even know what more I can say about Cassie's death that I haven't said already a dozen times since we started watching the classic episodes. Because as you know, I characterize this episode, this moment, as the most important episode, the most important moment of that decade. Absolutely. There is no other story, there is no other moment that impacted the show quite as deeply. And in a lot of ways, I think there's no other story that impacted me as deeply. And it was just worse now. It was just so much worse now. There was this agonizing split moment where just prior to Cassie actually dying, Sharon was holding her daughter, and just for a split moment, I saw her look over into Nick's face, and I could see her scanning his face for some hope, some hint that Nick knew a way to fix this, that he was going to be able to do something to help, because she knew that she was helpless. What's that feel like, to know that you are helpless to stop the worst thing that is happening to you right now? And Nick's shoes were equally horrifying to be in. I mean, Cassie sweetly saying, "Daddy," and then whispering to Nick what we didn't know at the time, but what we knew probably in the months later, whispering to Nick that she was the one driving the car that night, not Daniel. Not Daniel, who was also now fighting for his life in his own way. I managed to not shed a single tear during that episode until Cassie started getting more and more tired, and Nick decided to sing her a lullaby to send her to sleep. And I was starting to lose it with the lullaby. And then finally, in the end, there was the sound of the Flatline going thin as the Y&R theme song started to play in the background. Sharon threw herself over her daughter's body, and Nick sat there holding Cassie's hand. The Flatline is where I lost it when the music came in. I had been pacing around the dang room the entire episode, trying so hard not to watch it too deeply, and then I heard the music and the Flatline, and I just lost it. It's such a legendary episode, and I'm not fresh to it, you know. I mean, not only have I seen it, but I talk about it every week. So I'm wondering if there are Y&R fans out there who are watching this episode for the first time. Surely this is someone here right now with me has experienced this episode only for the first time, and I wonder if you found it to be as impactful as I have. I'd love to hear from you this week if this was your first time seeing it, because go to yrchat.com. Tell me what you thought about this episode, because I feel like I have talked ad nauseum on this topic. I don't have any more tears to give it right now. I don't know what else to say about it right now. The only thing I have left to say is, I think probably it springs from the fact that I was trying to watch this episode from a bird's eye view. I was trying to watch it not emotionally. I was trying to watch it more practically. So the practical question, that's the only question left on my mind, is why? What was the motivation for why Y&R killed Cassie? Why did Y&R choose to do this? Cameron Grimes was an Emmy winner. She was hugely popular when she was this cute little red-headed button. Could it be that Y&R just didn't know what to do with her now that she was entering into that awkward preteen stage that we all kind of go through? It's like, was she not young enough to be skipping around baking cookies, but also not quite old enough to write a romantic story for? I don't get it. I don't know why there was this lack of creativity for dealing with Cassie's character. I mean, yeah, you're going to make a splash if you kill somebody important, but is that really what you want to do? I wholeheartedly believe that Y&R made the decision to kill Cassie because they wanted to create a reason for Nick and Phyllis to be together. It's all there. I'm seeing all of the puzzle pieces come together in retrospect, in one way or another. But did they really have to kill the kid to do it? Was that really the only way they could do it? I mean, if Cassie needed to provide the drama to break Nick and Sharon apart, then they could have continued to play up on Cassie's rebellious phase, which is what they were doing and building toward in the weeks before her death. She was becoming a little bit of a rebel. So why not just go with that? Why not just turn Cassie into a troublemaker, slowly develop her into a character like Mariah, but just let her cause some problems for Nick and Sharon long enough to drive the wedge between them, and then send her off to boarding school for a couple of years, like all little good soap opera boys and girls. Hey man, I was promised that we were going to see Victoria and JT's 2008 wedding, but that episode ended right as Victoria was walking down the aisle. The entire episode was everybody hanging out at the ranch before the wedding, so we didn't actually see the wedding ceremony. What's up with that? I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm not sure anyone really needs to see and hear another set of empty soap opera vows, but I usually do like to see the ceremony and then the reception. I would have liked to have seen someone gotten drunk and caused a ruckus or something. But we did get the bridal suite, and I also feel disappointed if I don't get the bridal suite, so I'm glad we got that. Because Katherine and Nikki were there with Victoria, who's looking so beautiful in her white, almost was giving me kind of a boho vibe. It was very casual. It was not an elegant, like, large white wedding dress. It was simple and understated, and she had a little, a full white rose in her hair. It was very nice, very beautiful. I loved seeing Katherine and Nikki being there for her. Katherine swept in to give Victoria an all-in-one, something old, something borrowed, something blue gift, which was a big old honkin' sapphire ring. Classic, very expensive antique ring. That was very Katherine, very sweet in the bridal suite. And downstairs in the main room of the ranch, which I loved. I thought the ranch looked so beautiful. Did they call it the solarium? That someone, I think, in that episode mentioned that front seating area and called it the solarium. I think someone must have been instructed to move some flowers there or something, but apparently it's called a solarium. Yes, it's basically a sunroom. But solarium sounds so much better. I love the old ranch. And you know what else? I really loved that Paul was there on JT's behalf. Paul and JT had such a cool, friendly, but also kind of mentor-y, father-son-y kind of relationship. Paul was the original, and JT was his junior detective. His apprentice. And I really remember liking the dynamic between those two and what it brought to the show. Which brings me to the hardest part of watching the JT Victoria wedding episode. It was the fact that JT used to be such a lovable guy. He was so lovable that even Victor approved of him for his daughter. And that's why it's all the more ridiculous that Y&R let him go, let JT go, sent him off, but alright, but then brought him back as a angry wife abuser, and then just wrote it away with a brain tumor never to be heard from again. Where is JT right now? Prison, I guess? I don't know. How's his head? He had a brain tumor. He got whacked over the head with a fireplace poker by Nikki. And then the girls rolled him up in a rug, buried him alive. He sank through a storm drain, ended up almost drowning in the Genoa City River, and then also nearly asphyxiated at the cabin when the gas fireplace exploded. How did your life turn out, JT? Sweet-faced JT, standing there on your happiest wedding day of your whole life? How'd your life turn out? That was agonizing to watch. Because JT and Victoria were an unexpected pair, but they were quite a sweet pair. He really loved her. Victoria, by the way, you might have noticed, was hobbling around in that episode. Everyone was making reference to, are you okay? You're very weak. Are you feeling weak? The reason that she was weak was because Victoria was recovering from the time she got hit in the head by a rock. Wow, Victoria and JT both had major head injuries. Not the first time. I'm sure Victoria's had more than one head injury, but at this point, she got hit in the head by a rock at the Clear Springs explosion. I don't know if you guys remember that or not. There was a big, there was a project that was going on. They called it Clear Springs. Half the town was up at Clear Springs and the whole thing exploded. I don't remember exactly why, but that seems like a good episode that could be shown during an explosive week of Y&R classics. But Victoria was pregnant with Reed at the time of that explosion. She got hit in the head, caused her to go into premature labor. I don't know how that works. Is that how it works? You get hit in the head and you go into premature labor? All right. She delivered a healthy baby, though. She delivered Reed, despite all the odds. And then she went on to enjoy a beautiful wedding and a beautiful marriage to the man of her dreams, who later became the man of her nightmares. Oh, the year 2008 also included Gloria's reign over the Abbott mansion. After John had died, the judge had awarded Gloria and Jack to share custody of the Abbott mansion. Of course. Same thing happened with Katherine and Jill. People fighting over the house and end up getting shared custody, and hilarity and hijinks ensue. And they did. Because Gloria had the Abbott mansion redecorated with nothing but leopard print, as far as the eye could see. And she also had this giant, comical oil portrait of her dreams of herself placed over the mantle. Just the soap opera oil portrait of oneself placed over the mantle to establish the territory. It was fabulous. If you looked around at all the decor that you could tell Gloria put there, it was just fabulous. Frankly, I think that Gloria's redecorating of the Abbott mansion was way better than when Sharon tried to redecorate it. I'll never forgive her for that. But Gloria, for some reason, I was fine with it. It's funny because the Abbott mansion is so stuffy, and Gloria immediately took over and redecorated it as just kind of tacky in her fabulously tacky style. Yeah, this is another week where Jack and Sharon were married in that little brief span of time where Nick and Phyllis were married, so Jack and Sharon felt like they should get married just to balance it all out. Did not work. Ultimately, I guess neither did Gloria and Jeffrey's marriage. Sharon and Jack were married. Gloria and Jeff were married. They were both living at the Abbott mansion, sharing this space. And I don't think romance was in the air for either of those couples. Jeffrey had found out about Gloria's tainted face cream, and he blackmailed her into marrying him so that he could spend her $50 million Abbott inheritance like there was no tomorrow. And Gloria was powerless to stop it, or he could turn her into the police. So Gloria and Kevin cooked up another little scheme to cover up her previous little scheme, and she was planning to slowly poison herself. That's right. Gloria was planning to slowly poison herself to make it look like Jeffrey was the one who was doing it, trying to kill her for her money, so that he would get her, so that she would create the illusion that Jeffrey was trying to do this to her, and then he would be arrested and hauled away, and voila, problem solved. The lengths Gloria will go to. That's kind of what makes her intriguing. I don't know why Gloria is so willing to torture herself at any twist and turn. She intentionally used the poisoned face cream and got herself burned as part of her little scheme. And then Gloria also intentionally put poison into her tea to intentionally harm herself just enough as part of another little scheme. But actually, in the end, it turned out that Gloria didn't end up taking any of the poison. Jeffrey found out exactly what she was up to, and then Jeffrey switched out the poison, and Gloria's plan was foiled once again. Eric Braeden was so compelling in those scenes from 2003 where Victor was meeting his father for the first time. Those scenes were a really good example of why Eric Braeden has had the staying power that he has had in daytime TV. He's just incredibly compelling. And the story of Victor Newman is incredibly compelling. For Victor, everything goes back to the day that he was left on the orphanage steps. And in the 80s, we saw Victor was able to come to some sort of terms and some brief reconciliation with his mother before she died. But this was the end of Albert Miller. This was the end of Albert Miller without even one single ounce of discernible regret. He had no regret for not only abandoning his family, but disowning them too, knowing they were there and actively not wanting to be involved with them, actively not supporting them. How could Albert stand there, sit there, looking into his own son's eyes, pretending not even to recognize them, and then offering money to make him disappear? Why? Why was Albert Miller so insufferable? There has to be more to his story, something more than just one-dimensional evil father of Victor Newman. I wonder what it was. Why was he like that? I don't know. I also don't know what it's like to feel that you're unwanted by your parents, and that is how Victor felt on both accounts, that neither of his parents wanted him. I mean, those are the two people who are supposed to help you through the world, And I think it's that feeling of abandonment by them that is what has carried Victor through most of his life. It's what shaped him, and it's what shaped not only him, but the entire Newman family. Because Victor spent his life building a business empire so that he could go from powerlessness to powerful, from abandoned to beloved, and from unwanted to undisputed. That's his motivation. It always has been. But the irony is, Victor took it too far. At every step of the way, he fought too hard, and he ended up, over time, pushing his family away from him. He ended up pushing away the very thing that he claims is the most important to him, his family. Because the subtext of that scene between Victor and his father, as Victor's own son is standing there in the background, the subtext of that scene is that Nick had just turned Victor in to the feds for commercial bribery. We talked about it a little bit a couple weeks ago. That's why Michael was trying to track Victor down at the ranch, and that's why Christine was questioning both Michael and Phyllis. Victor was standing there preaching to Albert Miller about how family was the most important thing to him, but Victor had let his own relationship with his own son go sour to the point where Nick turned on him. That's quite a cycle of dysfunction there. On a lighter note, I had to chuckle a little bit when Victor walked into Albert's room and Victor first proclaimed that he was Christian Miller. I am Christian Miller. And I laughed a little bit because I imagined that what was going through Albert's mind was, wait, how did he get so German? How did my son get so German? It's like the elephant in the room that nobody ever talks about. Victor Newman has this great American dream story from the ground up, from the streets of Genoa City. So why is he German? Oh, well, that's a good note to take us out on Newman Family Week, wouldn't you say? Oh, these theme weeks. These family theme weeks, I feel like we've hit most of the major families, haven't we, by now? I think maybe a good poll question for us for this week is, which Genoa City family do you think had the best theme week? I mean, we've seen the Winters, the Abbotts, the Williamses even, with the Paul and the Chris episode. I'm going to include the Williamses there because that seemed like a family week. And we had the Baldwin Fisher week, and now the Newman family week. So which family do you think got the best rep? Go to yrchat.com to cast your vote for which Genoa City family you think had the best theme week. OMG! Next week is OMG week! It's kind of ridiculous because I first saw the theme week reported as Shocking Moments Week. And then I think someone at the network must have said, nah, Shocking Moments, that title is too long and it's not hip enough. Let's change it. We gotta call it OMG Week. Yeah, the kids will get that. We'll really draw in some viewers on that. I'm telling you, same as with Fan Favorites Week. I really think they announce this stuff and then they make little tweaks here and there. I don't know. It's just me, but I guess on the overall, I feel like Y&R is making some of this stuff up on the fly, even at a micro level. So, OMG Week. Well, I gotta tell you, right out of the gate, Y&R is going to be delivering us a true OMG Moment on Monday. Paul Williams discovers that Lauren has entered him into a nude centerfold contest. And Mary Williams, his very conservative mother, has now found out about it. OMG indeed. OMG indeed. I totally forgot about this. I think I saw it in my Y&R book at one point, but nobody's mentioned it. It's in so long that Paul ended up accidentally as a nude centerfold. This is going to be great. I feel like this is probably going to be the episode of the week for me. 1986. We had 2 centerfolds among us? Y&R did 2 centerfold storylines? Not really even that far apart, I guess, because we had one male, one female. We had Paul in 1986, and then Victoria. That had to have been, 94? So 8 years went by, and they said, let's give this a shot again. I can't wait. The 86 episode is going to be my favorite of the week, not just for Paul, but for whatever else is going to be going on in that scene. I love 80s TV. I gotta tell you, I'll just do a little teeny tiny little side note here. I recently found myself with about 45 minutes of blessed spare time at the end of my day right before my bed. Daughter has been doing so well on her potty training, and she's been going to sleep without too much fuss at all, and I have just a little touch of spare time, and I said to myself, I'm really into these 80s Y&R episodes. What about downloading some Dynasty? What about doing a little deep dive into some Dynasty? 1981, season 1. I downloaded the whole thing. I've only got a couple of episodes to go. I've never seen it. This is a totally fresh view for me. My household was a Dallas household. So I saw the Dallas, but I'd never seen the Dynasty, and it is so good. It is so freaking good. And there are so many story similarities and dynamic similarities to what goes on Y&R, especially in the earlier days. So it has been a real pleasure to watch something old new and to experience not just the storylines, but the aesthetics. You know, I love the hair and the decor, and I'm only on season 1, so I haven't even gotten to Joan Collins yet. I am going to be in for a real treat. I swear, if anything ever happened to Y&R, I'm just going to go back and watch old TV shows for the rest of my life. Maybe do a podcast or video about that. Oh, so look forward to Dynasty cast someday. Okay, back to the present. Well, no, not exactly. Back to 1992, because on Tuesday we're going to be seeing a 1992 episode where Sheila and Lauren are in it, and I think Sheila has locked Lauren and her mother in a farmhouse, and there is a struggle, and somebody is going to kick over a kerosene lantern, and the whole thing's going to go up in flames. That's probably at the end of the episode. Yeah. That's going to be some good drama. But also, I think it was right at the exact same time that Sheila was revealing the baby switch to Lauren, too. That Scotty was actually Lauren's child and alive. Oh, yeah, that's going to be crazy. Anything with Sheila in it is going to be crazy. And I'm all in for Sheila anytime you want to give it to me. On Wednesday, Sharon goes down into the sewer to find the body of Cameron Kirsten, which was put there by my very own Larry Wharton. I hope he's in that episode too. That episode's going to be from 2004 for Wednesday, and we saw Cameron Kirsten lurking around in the foreground of Sharon's scene on Friday, which was 2003, a little bit earlier, where Cassie and Sharon were having lunch at the restaurant. Cameron's in the foreground. This was, Sharon had gone to Denver. She had hooked up with Cameron on a one-night stand, but then as soon as it was finished, he beat her. She escaped, came back to Genoa City, wanted to forget it, And then the scene that we saw from 2003 on Friday was Sharon realizing that Cameron Kirsten was now in Genoa City, and Cameron was going to be he was there to frame Sharon for Frank Barrett's murder. Now that's Cassie's father, Frank Barrett. And of course, Sharon didn't want Cassie to know anything about any of this. Cameron Kirsten is such a disgusting scumbag. I almost don't want to see anything having to do with him except him dead in a sewer next week. But yeah, the guy continued to haunt and taunt Sharon even after his death. I don't even think he was really dead in this episode we're going to see on Wednesday, but we'll talk plenty about that next week, I'm sure. On Thursday, Lily's going to be finding out that Malcolm is her biological father, and now that's dreadlocks Malcolm, which is a rare treat. We've seen a lot of boy band Malcolm, but we're going to be getting dreadlocks Malcolm on Thursday. And then on Friday, Y&R finally worked in a Justin Hartley Adam episode. What were they waiting for? We're going to see that cabin explosion, and I'm surprised, honestly, that Y&R waited so long for that. And we're going to see Chloe torturing Adam, and then the cabin explosion as Chelsea's just pulling up, trying to get there to see him, just to see him. Why did Y&R wait so long to bust out one of their episodes that featured an alum who went on to be a super mega star, Justin Hartley? Ooh, I don't know. That was his last episode on the show, though, I think. And on Friday, we're going to get to see him go up in flames. Last week, as Michael Baldwin was tunneling his way into Christine's apartment, he had this really creepy moment where he was talking to himself and talking to Christine. And he said, "Surprise party time." Ew! He was talking to himself, like imagining that he's going to bust through the wall and surprise party time with Christine. Ew. That was our Who Said It quote for last week. And a few people got it right. It was Daisy, Henry, Nancy, Marianne V, Victoria, Ambreen, and Mark. You guys all guessed that was Michael Baldwin. That is quite a surprise party. It's a surprise party that I hope nobody ever has to go to. Oh, here's another pretty good quote. I think this is very appropriate for the week. How about this? Family is everything, even if it is dysfunctional. Who said it? Family is everything, even if it is dysfunctional. If you think you know, just go on over to yrchat.com to enter in your guess, and if you get it right, then I will give you your big congrats on next week's Y&R Chats. And now let's move on to your comments, shall we? It's Newman Family Week, so we're going to talk about Victor Newman. We can't talk about Victor Newman, though, without talking about Eric Braeden. Superplex, talking about the Abby paternity reveal episode, says that the fact is that Eric Braeden has a way with child actors. There is no one else on the cast who establishes a better and immediate rapport with them. Yes, I agree so much. That was a nice little scene between Victor and Abby as she says, "My mom says you're my dad." Yes, very nice scene. And also, I love that you're highlighting how well Eric Braeden does with these child actors. We've seen it again and again. In fact, during Emmys week, we saw Eric Braeden's performance that won him an Emmy, and it was him with Victor Jr. that he won an Emmy for working with that child actor in that scene. So we know he is very talented at this. I can think of so many other circumstances where a child actor has come into the scene, and there is just this moment of he's watching them and he's engaged with them, and he doesn't treat them as if they're a prop. He really pulls them in and seems to love the children and does very well with them. It's one of the things that is very redeeming about him. I always also found that Victor had a very special relationship with Cassie, and I thought Eric Braeden did really well with Cameron Grimes. I remember feeling that there was an Annie Daddy Warbucks kind of thing going on there, where he really seemed to love her and he really wanted to lavish gifts upon her to show her this new lifestyle and to really spoil her. Cassie was a great little character, and Daisy says, I think Cassie dying was one of the worst storylines that Y&R has ever had. I wish they had written a miracle instead. And I'll bet the current writers could create a new storyline that brings her back. Cameron Grimes could play her as well as Mariah. But also, a new actress who resembles Cameron could be introduced. I hate, though, killing off main characters, especially kids, when there were just so many more interesting and emotional stories that they could come up with. Well, I agree with you on that on all points. And I thought they were, this is the thing, when that episode aired, I thought there was going to be a miracle. Because Cassie was getting better. She seemed like she was going to pull through the way so many people have pulled through every other time they're in a hospital on a soap. And it looked like things were going in that direction. And then right at the very end, Y&R just twisted it. It just took this fast downward turn, and I remember the feeling watching this episode for the first time that it wasn't going to happen, that she'll be fine, she's gonna be fine. It's this false sense of fear. She's fine, they're not gonna kill Cassie. And that's what was so impactful to me watching that episode originally. But I love your idea about bringing Cassie back and letting Cameron Grimes play both characters. That'd be really fun. Or as you said, even if they went with somebody else, yeah, that's quite an idea. And of course, you know, I agree. I don't like killing off kids. They did it with Delia and I didn't like it then. Jamie says, the part I had forgotten about Cassie's death was Nikki and Victor sharing the story of the midsummer night moonlit ride. How beautiful, beautiful. And how absolutely sad and heartbreaking. But I think what really strikes me now is how much deeper I feel for this storyline and this specific episode. Seeing it end with the flatline, I'm a mom now. I wasn't a mom when it happened. And I was engaged, but I wasn't a mom yet. And not that the death of a child is ever not impactful and sad, but there's a deeper understanding of the pain that comes with being a parent. Yes, Jamie. I think you and I were on the same watching path, too, because I think you said you started watching the show in '93 also. So this is my exact experience, you know, watching it when I was 25. Yeah, you know, I mean, it's impactful. This is horrible. This child died. I felt for what Nick and Sharon were going through, but there's no way I could have known from firsthand experience what that would feel like to be a parent, and just thinking, just even the idea of losing my child is unfathomable to me. And so yeah, it's that I just wish they wouldn't have done it. I really wish they wouldn't have done it. It was sad, sad, sad. Sandra says, I had not seen the whole show of Cassie's death before, but it definitely made me cry. I thought all of the actors did a great job. Oh, pausing. Yeah, we've seen Cassie's death in flashbacks quite a lot. But the whole episode, obviously, I think a lot of us hadn't seen before or seen in a while. And on the whole, it was a very dramatic, very touching, very moving episode. And I was glad that Jamie mentioned the dialogue that took place between Nikki and Victor and the fireflies. The swarm of fireflies. I mean, that was a beautiful, beautiful, horrible, horrible moment. But continuing on with Sandra here, saying 2 of my episodes were preempted this week. So between last week and this, I think I saw JT kissing 3 different women. Yeah, I know, right? Because I think I think this week he was kissing 3 different women. We had Mac, Colleen and Victoria. That's so right. I loved seeing the original Colleen. Lindsay Fonseca, I believe was her name. And just seeing how she was so starry-eyed about JT. That's how he was back then. He was an artist. She was telling him to go off on his tour, go pursue his career. They still had their love. I mean, JT was a troublemaker at the beginning. I mean, when they really very first brought him on with the teen storylines and the Glow by Chabot, but it wasn't long before he was developed into a good guy. I mean, we could list all of the good guy things that JT has done, and that's why it's so hard to think of him in the dark light and the dark note that he was left on. In fact, Ellen says JT was a kind young man and a good friend to many. They moved him in and out of relationships, but he was never intentionally hurtful to anyone. He worked with Paul solving crimes in Genoa City for quite a stretch of time, definitely wearing a white hat. The character assassination they did on him at the end was completely unacceptable. Stupid move on the part of the writers to wreck a character with such a long history and deep connections. I totally agree. I mean, why wreck the character? They could have brought some, if they wanted to go in a dark direction, they could have brought somebody back to do it who had hints of darkness. I mean, there are a million different options, but why JT, who was a good guy? And all right, fine, you know, if they had to do it and then do the brain tumor storyline, I hated it, but at least follow through with it. We really never had any follow-up on his story, even after it was like, oh, brain tumor, he had a brain tumor. That storyline, remember when he was popping the pills and everybody thought, oh, he has a drug addiction, he went to the hospital, drug addiction. Did he even know he had a tumor in his head? Is that why he was taking the medication? I feel like they flubbed it. It's another instance where they didn't know where they were going when they started. And then they just ended it. It just was like, oh, brain tumor, we're done now. He's going to jail. I think Victoria vowed to help JT through this as he was in his hospital room recovering after his brain tumor surgery. And then he said, no, I want to go to jail. I want to accept my punishment. And then he just went off, and we never found out if he got convicted, and if so, how much time did he get? I don't know. I mean, they just took this character with a long, rich history on the show, and they just twisted him into this really dark direction, and they never followed through on any of it. Although I have to say, by the time we got there, I was ready to be done. I was ready to be out. But I felt like even in the darkest of the dark moments with JT's character, I still felt for the actor. I still felt that the actor was really gutsy and really compelling. So I think they really could have come up with a way to, all right, fine, brain tumor, whatever. Let's help him turn it around. Let's show him going through some counseling or something. But they just chose nothing instead. Well, JT was Victoria's husband. Let's talk about another one of Victoria's husbands, Ryan McNeil. Diana says, I had the privilege of meeting Scott Reeves, the actor who played him, a long time ago. I know Ellen has been mentioning that we've been seeing a lot of the actor in the classics. It was at a restaurant, if I remember correctly. I got to get my picture taken with him sitting down. He was even better looking in person, if you can believe that, and he is a very good-looking guy. I have an autographed picture of him that I bought while I was there. What I don't have is the picture of him and I. I don't remember why. We didn't have cell phones with cameras then. I went in with my sister, and I guess we didn't bring a camera. It was definitely a fun experience. He's married to Melissa Reeves, who used to play on Days of Our Lives. Yes, I remember, Diana, that Scott and Melissa Reeves were such a sweet soap opera couple of the 90s. They were always in all of the mags. He was on Y&R, she was on Days of Our Lives. And Ryan is another one of those characters who was just such a nice guy. I don't remember Ryan ever having any storylines that were particularly dark other than the things that happened to him, other than Trisha shooting and killing him. It's almost like if a character is good, Y&R wants to bring hell and torture upon them. That's all they can think to do. I'm sure it is not easy playing a nice guy. In fact, yeah, I mean, Gary was talking this week about how, I can't remember, there was an actress that he was mentioning, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the name, but actress is saying, hey, I would way rather play the good character than the bad character. The bad characters are kind of boring, but, you know, playing a good character, it gives you somewhere more to go. Yeah, it's more challenging as an actor. So maybe, and it's like Y&R doesn't totally appreciate that in a way. Paul, JT, Ryan, I mean, they're all just like good guys. I like to have a good guy around. Not everybody has to be, you know, dark and brooding and conniving. I mean, you need those characters to push forward the story on the good guys, but I think we need more good guys on the show. Speaking of Gary, I was looking at this comment here saying, Chatters were given a sumptuous feast to the eye Tuesday with the reopen of the legendary Genoa City Athletic Club restaurant. Its massive swinging entrance structure showcase just how cosmopolitan the junction had become since Brad Elliott was first dumped into the town square on the back of a hay truck in March of 1973. Oh yeah, from 1973, riding into town on the hay truck. And even I remember in that opening first episode, looking at all the houses. They did a shot of all the houses that Brad was seeing, and they were all very modest. And then you flash into, what was it, 2003, where we have the Genoa City grand entrance to the Grand Athletic Club. I do miss that set, and I did notice that big revolving door right away, and I thought, oh, that was cool. That revolving door was cool. I had no problem with the athletic club. I don't know why they couldn't have just remodeled it or given it a little bit of a refresher. Then again, I guess they all must go. Before the Genoa City Athletic Club was there, it was Gina's. Gina's burnt down. They built the GCAC, and she kind of took over there for a while, but it wasn't long-lived. That was the beginning of the end of Gina. Oh, well, let's talk about last week. I asked you guys what your favorite episode of Fan Favorites Week was, and no real big surprise to me, the first place winner was the episode where Michael digs a tunnel into Christine's apartment / to a lesser extent, Neil and Drew's reception. Okay, Neil and Drew's reception was beautiful. They're beautiful, but we know what that episode was about, and the majority of the Y&R chatters were most pleased to see that episode included in Fan Favorites Week. Second place winner, though, was episodes 1 and 2 of The Young and the Restless. That's exactly how I voted. Number 1 was Michael. Number 2 was those first episodes. Those were a real pleasure to watch. Third place was Catherine's facelift. No, I'm wrong. I voted for Catherine's facelift. Yes, I did. I absolutely voted for Catherine's facelift. I remember it. So I was in the third place. Fourth place was Hillary and Devon's wedding. And the least favorite, fan favorite, was Katy Perry posing for Restless Style. Although I know there were plenty of people who really enjoyed that episode too. Ambrini says Michael's tunnel and Neil and Drew's wedding was my pick. I liked everything. I didn't even recognize Michael with the facial hair. That's a funny comment because there are so many characters that I have a moment where I don't recognize them because so much time has gone by. Yeah, Michael is one of those. It just, at first glance on that episode, it was hard to even tell that it was him. Lynn 4283 says, of course, I voted for Devon and Hillary's wedding. Of course. Colleen says episodes 1 and 2 are such a treasure. I was hooked from the beginning and would definitely have come back for more if I had been watching in the 70s. I keep thinking about, now that I'm watching Dynasty, I keep thinking, okay, well, those episodes were 1973 for Y&R, and even Dallas, I want to say, was 1978. Dallas and Dynasty kind of seem to go together, and Dynasty was 1981. So Y&R 73, Dallas 78, Dynasty 81, and even in watching those other two shows that became extremely popular, I mean, Y&R came first. even these big TV shows, TV movies and things of the 80s that became really popular, Y&R was there right in the mold. I keep thinking as I'm watching Dynasty, oh, well, this is so much like Y&R. And it's like, oh, maybe they got some of it from Y&R. And I mean, those 70s episodes, they really were writing the mold there. Ellen says, I didn't think I'd really care about episodes 1 and 2, but they drew me right in. I liked the style of the show back then. It had a gritty feeling. Definitely my favorite episode of the week. Victoria says, although I didn't vote for episode 1 and 2, I thought I'd let you know. I have been watching The Young and the Restless I began watching The Young and the Restless in 1973 in the summertime with my friend Nancy and her mom. When the original episodes aired, I was in school and the VCRs were not readily available. So in my opinion, Young and the Restless first episodes did depict a portion of life in the United States, like Chris. Many girls dreamed of finding a good husband and having children. My experience was schools did not encourage women to go into the fields where they would be working full-time. I was encouraged to take subjects such as bookkeeping, shorthand, and home economics. Current times are so different. My friends and I realized that not all of us wanted this path. Many of us decided to go for our passions, but we had an uphill battle convincing our counselors, teachers, and families that we were doing the right thing. Oh, Victoria, first of all, just backing up quite a bit, but I think a lot of people picked up The Young and the Restless and soaps in general during the summer when you're home from school, and I had the benefit of being able to record the episodes and watch them when I got home, but you didn't. But I love that you're giving me a little slice of 1973 life there, that it did reflect a portion of this society at the time. I mean, I think the Brooks' family maybe would have been a little bit progressive there, and that Stuart was saying, hey, I don't want Chris to get married too early. I want her to go off and have a chance to explore what she might like to do as a career. And Superplex also says, you have to understand, Allie, this is 1973, and the class divide was very topical in the 70s. That same sense of class warfare was expressed by Jill when she first set her eyes on Catherine's sumptuous living circumstances. Yes, okay, so yes, class warfare being a topic on Y&R in 1973, and it's definitely prevalent even in Dynasty as I'm watching that today. So yeah, I think getting back into these older TV shows helps me sink my head a little bit further into what it was like. I mean, I was born in 1980. So I just never got to experience it firsthand. It's interesting that TV is kind of an odd little time capsule, you know? I mean, there's a reason why that these shows were successful. They were obviously hitting on something that was very real for the audience of the time, no matter what time they were in. Oh, okay. Well, we've talked about these old episodes and we've gone all the way back, but Sandra is the only person who talked to me about the new episodes of The Bold and the Beautiful. Now, this is a comment that Sandra left last week, right before I recorded Y&R Chat, so I didn't see it. And I don't know if your opinion, Sandra, has changed at all, but Sandra says, I just got done watching the new episodes of Bold and the Beautiful, CV-19 compliant. If this is what Y&R is going to look like, we'd be better off starting Y&R from episode 3 and letting it run until the pandemic is over. OMG, the camera shots were ridiculous. Hand placements on the side of one's face to block the fact that they're not kissing the actor, but their actual significant other. And the constant cutaways with the camera is dizzying. Oh, yes, that was, I really didn't feel that way. I watched the 2 episodes from last week, and then I did watch, I think maybe they aired 4, I want to say there were 4 new episodes of Bold and the Beautiful this past week. I didn't watch them with a fine-tooth comb, but I mean, I let them play, and I watched them, and to me, I mean, it just wasn't really even that jarring to me. I almost didn't notice by the end of the week. I thought they did a good job. But Sandra says, to be fair, in the scenes where they filmed the actors from across the room, those were pretty normal, save for the fact that everyone is noticeably far apart. But any scene where the actor an actress is close to one another, that's when the constant cutting away with the camera happened. There was no panning from one person's face to the other to see their expression, just an unnatural series of headshots. Okay, I see what you mean. So it's just that it was like someone's face, hard cut, someone else's face, hard cut. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that. I'm sure it's not as smooth. Yeah, I mean, but I wonder if they're going to find a way to improve these techniques and take what they've learned and hopefully make it better over time. I really didn't think it was bad, but I wonder if they can continue to smooth out the wrinkles over time, and maybe over time we just won't even notice anymore. Oh, one final comment on that from Gary. And by the way, Gary, glad that you and anyone else in California there is safe after the earthquake. But Gary reminded me, I'd forgotten about this, that Y&R and Bold and the Beautiful have no hair and makeup people. So I didn't really even think about that when I was watching the new episodes of Bold and the Beautiful. So I wonder if the actors got any kind of coaching, maybe via video, from the hair and makeup people, where they gave tutorials to them to show how they could do their own makeup, because I'm sure that a lot of them were really nervous about making themselves look good when they're used to just kicking back and letting somebody else do it. I feel bad for all those people who don't potentially have those jobs anymore, because I don't know if we're going to be going back to some situation where there's going to be close contact like that anytime soon. So I do feel bad those hair and makeup people probably are going to lose their jobs. Gary had also said that they probably are still using wardrobe though, right? There has to still be a wardrobe mistress picking out clothes for them. But let's see. Now, Gary also asks if The Bold and the Beautiful is airing new episodes, which they did all last week. All last week was new episodes, and I'll add here that General Hospital also is going to begin airing their new episodes on Monday. The question on everyone's mind, and this is what Gary is bringing up here, the biggest question, pretty much the only question we really need to be asking, when are we going to get our new Y&Rs? Presumably they've gone back to production. Eric Braeden said they were doing it, and I thought they've been doing it for the last 2 weeks. Bold and Beautiful has been airing new eps. General Hospital has been airing new eps. So the big burning question now is, when are we going to get our new eps of Y&R? Are there any insiders out there that can, give us an update, give us some inside scoop? All right, that just about does it for Y&R Chat Cast. Look forward to Dynasty Cast, though. I wonder if there's anybody else out there who has been watching the classic Y&R episodes, and maybe that's prompted you to pick up some other shows. What other shows have you guys been watching during your downtime? Maybe you watch every single Y&R episode and you don't have any spare time, or maybe you're coming in and out, seeing a little Y&R here and then picking up something else there. What other shows are you guys watching? I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear some more impressions from folks who were watching the Cassie episode for the first time. I feel I've failed you on that this week, but I mean, really, truly, how many times have I talked about Cassie's death? In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I don't think anybody really wants to even hear me talk about this again. It's just so, it's just like, why? I don't want to torture myself. I don't want to torture you. Well, yrchat.com, as you know, is the website. You can go there, hang out, chat while the episode is airing, see all the various screen caps and goodies that I have for you there, and come back next week for OMG week. I think it's going to be a good one. Honestly, all of the episodes that they picked, I think, are going to be interesting to watch and are going to have some jaw-dropping moments. And I love jaw-dropping moments. Okay, everybody. Have a good week, and I will see you next time. Bye.